Hello there. We are doing our video notes for lesson 4.9. You can title your video notes lesson 4.9 solving quadratics. And today in this video, you are going to be able to solve quadratics by setting a quadratic expression to 0, then using your good factoring skills. You can also solve a quadratic equation in context. That means word problem. By factoring and finding zeros. So that's the theme today. We're going to look at the vocabulary words that you might hear or see, or words like quadratic, expression, equation, zeros maybe. If you don't hear the word zeros today, you'll probably hear it in a very soon in the future lesson. Factor, zero product property. This week, our theme has been zero product property, so we're going to continue on what that is. So for example, if you have A times B is equal to 0, that means you split this up into two equations. Actually, let me write it this way. So a lot of times you'll see it as like x minus A and x minus B. And these are linear factors. And these linear factors can be broken up into two equations. I wrote two. Silly me. Okay, x minus B is equal to 0. So you can solve for x in both cases. This is how you use zero product property in order to solve for x. So how are we going to solve for x when you have a quadratic? Well, what's a quadratic? If you don't remember what a quadratic is, it looks something like this. ax squared plus bx plus c. Something in the form of ax squared, any number for a, plus bx, any number for b, plus c, any number for b. And a, b, and c can be positive numbers, they can be negative numbers, they can even be 0. How do we solve for x? So in this question here, there's no directions here, but what if I just inserted some directions? Solve for x. What would you do? Well, maybe you like move the numbers over to one side. No. Here's how you solve for x. When you see a quadratic, and this x squared should hint at a quadratic here, x to the second power. What you do is you move everything over to one side and then factor and solve for x. So for example, in this case, we need one side to equal to 0 in order for us to start solving. So I'm going to add 8 on both sides. If my pen would cooperate, I'm going to zoom in here. Add 8 to both sides, add 8 to both sides, draw a bar, x squared minus 11x plus 28 is equal to 0. Okay, so how do we factor this? We need, at this point, this is good. Our quadratic is set equal to 0. Now all we have to do is factor, set both factors equal to 0, solve for x. So notice that this will be my scratch area. So I need factors of 28 that add up to negative 11. So let's see. Oh yeah, how about negative 7 times negative 4? That adds up to negative 11. Check. So in my scratch work column, which is going to continue down here, I'm going to do my reverse box method. Some of you can do this in your head already, which is really good. 28. I'm factoring this guy here. But some of you are going to continue to use box method, and that is perfectly okay. So I have x minus 7 and x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to use zero product property, split it up into two equations. Two equations, two answers. And most of the time it's going to be the opposite version of whatever's written on the left-hand side here, because you're using the additive inverse. Plus 4, x is equal to 4. So you have two answers, x is equal to 7 and x is equal to 4. So recap. To solve quadratics, move everything over to one side so it's equal to 0. Does not look like a face. Okay. then factor, and use ZPP to solve for x. You can solve for x or essentially the only variable that is there. So sometimes we have different variables that are represented there, but in this case, it's x. Okay, so that's the first example. There's 2 more examples, and then we're going to do a word problem video. That might be part 2 at this rate. Okay, how do we do this? Okay, what do we do? In this case, how do we solve for x? I don't think you guys know how to undo these squares, the opposite of a square yet, but that's coming up. So in order to do this right, we're going to expand first, make quadratic equal to 0, and then factor and solve using ZPP. So this is our game plan here. When you see something like this and I just say, solve for x, well, all right, we're gonna have to expand first in our scratch work. In our scratch work, you can do a box method, x plus 5, x plus 5. That's what that square means. That square means you just multiply it by itself. So I actually know what this is in my head, but in your scratch work, I recommend you pause and you figure it out. If you don't want to pause and figure it out, that's not good. You should pause and figure it out. Otherwise, I'm going to write down what x plus 5 squared is. It is x squared plus 9x plus 25, and that's equal to 4. How do we solve for this now? Well, you do the same thing we did in example 1. You are going to set one side equal to 0. So I usually do this. I tell you to move everything over to one side. Doesn't matter which side, because there's only one side that's going to work, and if you pick the wrong side, you will figure out a way to make it work. I promise, but it takes a little bit of practice. Okay. At this point, we have moved everything to one side and it equals to 0. Perfect. That means we can factor it into 2 binomials. So this, I need factors of 21 that add up to 10. So in your scratch work, especially if you're still using these training wheels, which I highly recommend these training wheels, you're going to need a reverse box method. I actually know what this is in my head because of my experience factoring, because I know I need factors of 21 that add up to 10. Oh, I wrote 10, but I shouldn't have wrote 10. I should have written 3. So what you need to do in your scratch work, which I'm not going to go through in the video, is you need to do the scratch work over on the right-hand side. Pause the video and do the scratch work and then come back. I think it takes too much time to do it in the video. This is also something you can ask your teacher when you get back. Like, I missed a part in this video. Can you go over how Miss She factored this polynomial in example 2? That kind of stuff. Okay, what does this mean? The more important part in this video is we are going to use zero product property, and we are going to write, this is zero product property. It's when I take both the factors and I split them up into 2 equations that are both equal to 0. So, well, I'm a really big fan of 7, I guess. Okay. So I have my 2 answers. I have x minus 7 and x minus 3. There's scratch work that I didn't do on purpose. So go clear it up with your teacher if you need help with the scratch work. Got it? Okay. 3 examples. I'm trying to move this, keep this video going. Okay. Because we're at 9 minutes. All right. How do we do this? Well, what we're going to do is we are again going to expand first. Expand the equation first. The equation. Whew. We also have to use our order of operations, that PEMDAS thing that you've been working on since the beginning of the year, since you were like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. We have to do it here as well. So PEMDAS means we need to do what's in the parentheses first, then the exponents, and then multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition from left to right. Parentheses. The parentheses are already done. X minus 3, there's nothing more we can do. Exponents. Now you have to do the exponents. That means leave that 4 by itself. You can't multiply it yet. You see how multiply is after exponents? So in your scratch work, you need to multiply x minus 3 twice. All these steps you know how to do. I think the hardest part about this is that there are more steps now. So you have to really organize your work. Notice how I'm trying to keep my scratch work on one side of my paper and my beautiful work on the other side of my paper. Now, how do I expand? Well, I told you that you need to make one side equal to 0 in order to factor and use zero product property. So let's keep expanding, and I'm going to use distribution over here. My good friend distribution. Hope I'm doing this right. Okay. And I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. I'm going to get 4x squared minus 24x plus 35 is equal to 0. Okay, now I have to factor. So I need factors of 140, because 4 times 35 is 2 times 70, which is 140. And they need to add up to 24. So I need to think of factors of 140. So what about 14 and 10? And what about, 14 and 10. Nice. Negative 14, negative 10. That's equal to negative 24. Nice. Not bad. Okay. I actually have to do the scratch work because I can't do this in my head. So I'm going to go ahead and do the scratch work. What I really should have checked first is if there was a greatest common factor in there. I don't think there is, but in fact, I'm looking at it and there's no greatest common factor. So I'm going to try this out. This looks like it's negative 7 and 2x and negative 5. Okay, that wasn't so bad. All right, we have expanded, we have moved everything over to one side so it's equal to 0, and now we're going to use, we have factored, and now we're going to use zero product property. So I'm going to write 2x minus 7 is equal to 0, and 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. From here, these are the types of equations. This is why I was practicing these types of equations with you for so long. It's because I want to get you at the point where you can solve these no problem. Okay, I have to solve my other equation. Boom. The last step when you solve equations is usually to divide. And I'm going to leave my work as a fraction. No need to leave it as a decimal, just write it as a fraction. Okay, that's part 1 of the video. Part 2 is coming up. Right here, you should summarize. What I want you to summarize the steps to solving quadratics. All right, when you're done with that summary, go ahead and move on to the next video.